think outside the box, if you will. I mean, go there, go off campus. Let's think this through. And sure enough, that's where the Mustang was born. When it finally hit, it took the country by storm. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cars in Context. I'm your host, John Clor. We're going to put cars into the context of your everyday life. This is a great show and a chance for the Motor City to really get all those answers that are inside everyone's heads answered by experts and professionals. You know, behind me you see a little Cars in Context sign, and I wanted everyone to know that that Cars in Context sign means that we're going to give a lot of direction on this show. We're going to show where the auto industry is going and how it really affects your life. Also, I've got a couple of cars that were really taken out of context in their era, and we're going to talk about all those things and how the car really affects your daily life. My job is to entertain you. I really hope that I can give you some education about cars, and of course, I want to enlighten you about how this affects your automobile. You know, your car is usually your second most biggest investment of your entire life next to your house. And of course, if you live in my neighborhood, maybe your car is actually a bigger investment thanks to the loss in real estate value. But it's really important that you really know a little bit about the industry and what's going on, and we're going to show you that whole world. And the best way to do that is by bringing in experts. I'm not going to make any excuses for my decidedly Detroit perspective, but what I will do is to give you great information. And to do that, I'm bringing in today one of our old friends, a guy who's been on both sides of the fence, both on the automotive side, on the journalism side. He now really is running his own blog, and one of my favorites actually, thevirtualdriver.com. I want you to welcome Chris Sawyer. Chris, welcome to Cars in Context, man. This is going to be so awesome. It's about time that you get a little bit out from behind your laptop and off the internet for a few hours and come down to WMTV.
I saw the sun today for the first time.
Yeah, that's right. But folks, this is really going to be great for Chris, because I think to get the virtual driver outside of the internet realm and get him on TV, you're going to see all kinds, a wealth of knowledge. I've known Chris for many, many years. But Chris, before we get started about our great topic of the day, how about we find out what's in the news?
Okay.
Okay, what's in the news today? Well, I'll start off, Chris, if you don't mind. Folks, you know, we've all talked about America's love affair with the car. We've recently seen a headline that said the world is passing us by. You know, America was leading the world in cars per capita, but now we've been passed by Italy, Germany, France, and even Spain. Now, there's a Carnegie Endowment for the International Peace.
Sure about that?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Wow. That's bad.
But this Carnegie Endowment did a study, Chris, and they said that, you know, they count the number of passenger vehicles for every 1,000 people in your country. So, and supposedly this measures your affinity for owning automobiles and how much you love cars. Now, Japan is still roughly even with us, and we're still ahead of Russia and Brazil, Mexico, South America. But guess what, folks? We're getting past. Indonesia, China, and India are catching up as well. Now, those countries, you know, are in the huge growth of the middle class.
It's usually there's like 12 or 13 people to a car.
Well, in India, but in the middle class is what's driving all this. And data suggests that as American middle income falls, cars are more expensive for us. We're going to have fewer and fewer of them. And that, Chris, goes back to the good old days of before the Model T, when only the rich drove around in cars.
Oh my God.
I know, we're going backwards instead of forward.
I want my car.
I know. That's disturbing news, so that means you should all go out and buy a new car. What do you've got, Chris?
Well, they've got new rules for black boxes in cars. Bet you didn't know there were black.
I thought,
remember every time an airplane crashes, there's a black box?
They look for the black box.
Well,
you mean to tell me there's one in my car right now?
Absolutely.
So I didn't even know that. Folks, did you know that? Probably not.
There's the Alliance of Automobile Manufacturers, easy for me to say, honestly. They wanted to delay the new rules that were setting Fed standards for the black boxes that go into effect September 1st.
Okay, this fall.
Well, you know, the black boxes, which are event data recorders, which is a nice way of saying you've crashed and we're going to find out why.
Yeah, the insurance company wants to know.
They collect all the data up to in the minutes before the crash. Another way to say, oh, you're at fault. Sorry, we're not going to pay.
See, yeah, black boxes are watching you.
Well, the older boxes, they don't comply with the new standards. So without the standard in effect, they could have just disconnected the boxes and waited until the the turnover came and they could put the new box in. Well, the Fed said, no,
Oh,
sorry,
thank
can't
you,
do that.
Thank you, Mr.
And now,
Litsa.
you know, everybody's going to be able to do what Flo does and put that thing in and tell everything that you do
I
all
saw
the
that.
time.
I saw that on TV. I said, "Oh my gosh, that is like they're monitoring you."
And
to see how
people
you're
don't
driving,
realize that.
And they said, "Oh, we'll give you a discount." Sure, they will.
Until they see that you've gone 85 in a 50 zone and they go,
Well, that was just to get away from
Sorry,
the crazy
canceled.
person. Yes.
Well,
That's
that was
scary.
me, okay.
That is scary. Well, listen, I got another one. Speaking of scary, I know everybody beats up on the Chevy Volt, and we've heard now down in Hamtramck that they're going to shut the plant down a couple of weeks this fall. And a lot of people are saying, well, you're not selling as well. I think they've sold 11,000 through the summer, and the rumor was they were thinking of selling 45,000 cars.
By the second year, yeah.
Okay,
First
well, I
year is
mean,
2025.
the good news is that it's still it's selling great in California. So then they're actually outselling the
Which
Nissan
is
Leaf.
saying something.
Which is it's a
An
GM
American
car
car in
in
California?
That's right.
How can
But
that happen?
the other thing that people need to know, folks, is that GM is actually shutting down the factory a little bit because they're going to make the new Impala there in Hamtramck, and that we're going to get the latter end of
2014 model.
yeah early 2013. So it's 2014. So that's another reason. So it's not all just the Volt, but you know, I'm kind of pleased the Volt's doing the way it is. I mean, it's
Well, the biggest problem with the Volt was they oversold it, for one thing, and it was they sold it for so long that people look at it and go, hasn't it been out in the market for like 5 years?
yeah.
And it's expensive, but over time it'll catch up. But the biggest problem has been that they tried to do too much too fast and try to knock the Prius off, and you can't do that.
And as gasoline gets more expensive, who knows? That might work. Do you have another one?
Yes, our local lithium-ion battery maker, A123
Oh, yeah.
Systems.
Thank God for our metro
A123.
area.
That's
A123.
You can't forget where you work there.
No, you're first in the phone book too if you're
Well,
A123.
they've hit financial difficulty, and despite a lot of backing from the Obama administration,
a lot of money.
I'm not saying Solyndra, but somebody could. They eventually sold the majority control of the company to the Chinese car part maker.
The Chinese are buying
now, let
everything.
me make sure I get this right. Wang Xiang Group.
The Wang Zhang.
Yeah, well, which Wang
Everybody
Chung,
Wang
whatever
Zhang,
it is.
yep,
So that means that you and I are paying for a Chinese car maker to get a leg up on building electric vehicles for people who live in China that then they can sell over
You know,
here.
this is again one of those little things that kind of pushes the limit on it. So
And how much trouble are they in?
Yeah.
NASDAQ says, well, they have to be at least $1 a share, and they're at 37 cents.
not good, not good. Well, folks, and one more thing before we get out of the news here. I just wanted you all to know that silver is no longer the most popular car color. I know that disappoints a lot of you. You know, for what I think from '01, silver has been #1 in America. We got passed by white. Thank you, iPod, for an iPad and iPhone for passing. White is considered now as clean and uncomplicated.
White.
But just to want you to know, and black, by the way, is still #3. White is now #2. If you were in Europe, black would be #1 still, and in Asia, silver still #1. That's the news. We're going to take a little break, and we'll come right back after this. Hi, and welcome back to Cars in Context. I'm John Clor. I'm here today with Chris Sawyer of thevirtualdriver.com, and now it's time for putting Chris in the driver's seat. And Chris, we're going to be talking about a really cool topic of the day. This one is those new talking cars, the new technology, the one that I heard the governor and the head of the transportation department say is going to be a game changer. It's going to change fundamentally the way we drive cars, and we're going to be so much safer. Tell us a little about this talking car experiment that I hear is going on in Ann Arbor for a few months.
Well, basically, what the whole idea is quite old. It goes back.
Really?
Oh yeah, the technology.
It's not news.
No. It goes back into the 1980s, and even before then was the idea. But in the 80s, we were starting to get the technology. We could see where it was going. And basically, you're trying to get the infrastructure to act as a node for the cars to talk to each other, so that you know where the other car is, how fast it's going. You can tell if a potential traffic accident is about to happen, and then send a signal to the offending car and stop it.
Wow, so it'll apply the brakes if
Oh,
for example, like maybe you're looking down, and I know some of you are still texting, we don't understand what's wrong with you, but you're looking down, and then all of a sudden you look up, a car is in the intersection. It could actually read that you're going too fast.
It could bring you to a stop. It could steer you around it. All those things. Once we get the autonomous control of the car, those things are going to happen. It'll be taking its information from the infrastructure and from the other cars. There are other ways of doing it. You can just do car to car,
right?
Which makes every vehicle a node on this whole net.
Okay.
Doing it with the infrastructure itself can get expensive because you've got to put the infrastructure up, you've got to maintain it, all that sort of thing.
So we're not talking about this stuff just being in the car. We're talking about you need the road system to have.
Well, yeah, and that's changed a lot because in the early days you were going to have to put lines down next to the road and have all sorts of stuff in there. Now you can actually put a Wi-Fi node at every intersection. Okay. And that's actually pretty cheap.
Now, before, Chris, when we talked about talking cars, it was always the automakers that were doing these experiments pretty much autonomously, and some would work with each other. But how is why is the government involved in talking cars? What's their role in all of this?
Other than knowing where you're going and how fast?
Oh, I knew you were going to get to that.
Yeah. Well, big part of the problem is that we're still killing about between 30 and 50,000 people a year. And that's always, you don't want to have that happen if you can do something about it. In fact, Volvo thinks that this is such a hot technology that they're saying that they were showing as, not really as a joke, almost as this is what we think it can do. They're saying you can do a car basically made out of the same stuff you make lawn furniture because cars will not crash anymore.
Unbelievable.
And truthfully, that is the upside, that eventually the cars will not crash as long as the network doesn't go down and all the other things that you and I run across with our computers. But the big problem is that it also opens the door for your car being hacked, for the infrastructure that it's going through to be hacked. I mean, let's say you put a Wi-Fi node at every intersection.
Okay.
What's to keep somebody from sitting there and monitoring that node very surreptitiously and sending a signal over the signal that's coming out very quietly into the cars that are around it and hacking your car?
Well, you could provide some. I mean, that could be carnage on the roads if you're having the wrong people in charge of it. The other thing that kind of bothers me, Chris, is I'm looking at when you talk about Wi-Fi, the reliability of things like during a storm, power outages. Sometimes I lose my internet connection and I get frustrated. And people, during storms and hurricanes and thunder showers, their cell phone goes out. And, that technology. So you don't want people really relying on doing their driving for them.
Well, you would have to use a different form of it. You'd have to use a form much closer to what the military uses, which is mil-spec. Wi-Fi, which it has a much stronger signal, but then of course the cost goes up. And if you have that strong a signal, granted you can control the area in which it is operating.
Sure.
Then people can hack it that much easier. So there are a lot of things, and you've got to go data encryption. You're talking about not just millions of lines of code, you're talking about billions, if not trillions of lines of code.
Wow.
So something goes wrong, and it's granted it's data compiled on a computer and to make it so that you don't put human error in there, but hey, machines make mistakes too.
Yeah. So is it part of this being in Ann Arbor because it's kind of the tech seat around here? And
well, the University of Michigan Transportation Institute was really one of the epicenters for all of this.
Okay.
And they've been leading this charge. This has also been going on for years in Germany and in other places. Eventually, and there are other things that are part of this. BMW, for example, is working with San Francisco and the Bay Area so that you'll be able to tell where a parking spot is and how to get there and all that sort of stuff. Basically for electric vehicles. But think about it. If you're going downtown and you knew that you were going to go, let's say, to Comerica Park, where would you park? You can find it right now. It'll direct you straight to it and say, I can reserve that spot for you, and you won't have to pay. You can just drive in because I've got your smartphone information. Boom, you're there. There's a lot of things that you can do, but there are some really serious downsides.
Well, I mean, I have to admit, the thought of going to a Red Wings game and finding a parking spot that's down low in a garage or a structure is always great. But beyond the parking thing, I think the issue here is how much of the thinking is this technology going to do for you? Because I'm never a real big proponent of driving, giving up the driving experience. And Chris, let's face it, you and I are probably on the same page on this. I think that if you don't really want to drive, just take the bus, to solve it. Get off the road.
Have you taken a bus recently, John?
No. Okay, all right.
No, I understand what you're saying, and you're absolutely right, because think of it this way. When we introduced anti-lock brakes, people thought they were the greatest thing because I can stop, or actually you can steer around things. It doesn't make you stop faster.
Well, everybody thinks that makes you stop faster.
Exactly. And then they said, well, I can rely on it so I can brake later. Now, how many people who shouldn't be texting now and should be watching what's going on are going to be sitting there going, I'm going to go to sleep or read the newspaper because my car is going to drive itself. And let me tell you, GM in 2015 is going to introduce Super Cruise, which is going to go right to the edge of a self-driving car.
Oh,
and the only reason they're not going over that edge is because there's still some legislation that has to be written both on the federal level and on the 50-state level to allow this. Nevada being the first one to do it because the Google cars are out there.
Oh yeah, that's
Easy
right.
for me to say.
I remember. They're
And those cars are going to basically drive themselves. But what people forget about the Google cars is this. They are going to know where you go, how you go, when you go, and all of that information will probably be sold to advertisers.
Sure, absolutely. Well, that's kind of scary for me. And folks, if I were you, I'd really start to follow this little experiment we're having here in Michigan, because I think the impact that could result from the way we drive, maybe our insurance rates. What about things like the amount of distraction that you already have in your car? Maybe you're going to rely more on the technology. And isn't that an issue right now? I mean, younger people are not really adept at driving as well as what we had to learn on stick shifts and rear drive cars. They came into their lives with front wheel drive automatic transmission cars with ABS.
Right.
So it looked like they were better drivers, but in reality,
they had better equipment. There is no bad car these days. When we were growing up, there were some really bad cars. I mean, oh.
Yeah.
And that sort of came to an end in the late 90s. There is not a bad car being sold in this country when you really think about it. But yeah, plus they've got all the technology distracting them, and the thing about that is they feel the need to answer it immediately. The phone rings, I got to answer it. It could be one of my 12 million Facebook friends.
Why has that happened to us?
I wouldn't know. I only got two Facebook friends.
So keep your friends down on Facebook.
That's
the,
right.
the other thing is the connectivity issue. I know there's a lot of buzz in Washington, D.C. about maybe we, as the car companies add more connectivity into the car, maybe we should pass laws and restrictions on should
right.
And then there are companies that are going to take your email and turn it into voice.
Right.
And they say, well, then what if we read your email to you while you're driving? Why is that a distraction? Because if you had your passenger...
Oh, but it is a distraction. The thing is, even if you're on the phone, it adds a second to your reaction time. At 60 miles an hour, what's a second?
Oh,
If it's 60, if you can go 60 miles in an hour, just do the math, because I'm not going to do it for you. The whole thing is, that's a lot of territory that you're covering.
Okay.
And so but the same thing happened with radio. And still people, before all of this happened, they were, backing into people and all that, changing the radio station. This will eventually work itself out. It will be somewhat Darwinian.
You think so?
Yeah, but the thing is, we're in this conundrum right now as an industry of I have to have the most technology possible to sell this to somebody, because if I'm not seen as being a technology leader, they won't buy my car, especially in the upper echelons of the market.
Yeah.
But what the Harris Research Institute recently did a poll, it's on my website, that if you look at it, people are saying, I've got too much connectivity now and I don't know what to do with it, but hey, could you give me some more?
Well, folks, this is an issue. I don't know if you've been following all this, but you really should take a look at how much connectivity is in the new cars today. I mean, there is so much to learn. You actually have to have a salesman take a special course in teaching you how to connect your phone and learn. And then I think there's a backlash. Chris, a lot of people are saying it is so complicated now that just give me knobs and buttons, and especially when it comes to AC, and they don't want the what are they the
pictograms and all that stuff.
The touch screens. They say it's just
it's not just that. It's because I can reach out and do this, and I know what I'm doing, and I've got tactile feedback.
So you can be driving and you know the knob, and you know what knob is the whatever.
Right. But there are some technologies out there that the minute they see your hand go to it, you can do it virtually, and it'll put up a little pictograph on your head-up display, and you can adjust it that way.
Well, I think the big issue was that people, when you have, you're driving down the road, and you have this screen right here, and you're saying, you've got to look off the road and touch this screen. You're actually, one hand has to come off?
I've had some cars recently that had so much stuff in it, and you get to start to play with it. I drove into the other lane.
Oh, man.
And I just said, okay, that's it. I'm turning it off.
Yeah. Well, and remember, was it Hertz that came up with the first GPS systems in rental cars? It used to be called Never Lost.
Yeah.
And I know you guys that rented that car, you used to call it Always Lost.
Always Lost.
Because there was a disclaimer when that was fired up when you started the car. It says, you can, if you're alone in the car, you promise you're not going to use this.
Oh,
or would it be disabled?
But have you seen what's happened recently?
No.
The new navigation systems, because people complained about the fact that they couldn't use them on the fly and change things, say, we suggest that you do not do this. Do you accept full responsibility for what you are about to do? And you say, I accept, and you can program it on the fly. It's great. If you got a passenger, great, they can do it. But the thing is, a lot of these systems are getting, there's a lot of information, a lot of things going on, and this is becoming a problem. And so you look at that and you say, okay, what's our answer? Well, we get cars to talk to each other and do all this stuff. Pay attention, would you? I'm out there with you, and I don't want to see you texting, okay?
Yeah, it is nerve-wracking. I don't know if you've been down the road. I've been driving along and looking next to me and I see, well, that person's texting. If they're behind you, you just get nervous. And I know the technology, if this experiment in Ann Arbor goes well, maybe people think, I feel safer now because I can't get in that crash if I'm not paying attention. But to me, that means you're kind of relying on that technology.
Absolutely, you're relying completely on the technology. You get to the point where you get lulled into this sense of confidence and you don't pay attention to what you're doing. You always have to pay attention to what you're doing. If you want to know what's really going on there, don't go to YouTube and watch crash videos and think, oh, how terrible that is. Go out and take a performance driving course. It will give you the best idea, not only what your car is capable of, but what you're not capable of, because you think you're a better driver than you probably are. I know it opened my eyes when I took the course.
Oh yeah, and I know a buddy of mine had put his daughter through the Ford's Driving Skills for Life program for high schoolers, and she thought she was a really great driver. When she came out, she goes, I didn't realize I had so much to learn about driving. Folks, driving is a skill. It really is. And for me, it's a lot of fun. My wife, Jenny, complains that when I play the radio or play music, I like to hear the engine.
It's because you're dancing, John.
Well, but just from the waist down in the car. But I'm just telling you, bottom line in there is I don't want the music. I don't mind talking. But that's the question now. If the car can take your email and then speak it, what's the difference between just your passenger?
Well, not because you have to formulate an answer to it. It's not just speaking it to you. The next step is right here, and now you're going to be able to give it a reply, and it will send it out.
So you're thinking, oh, what should I say?
Yeah.
And so for that moment, you're not, whatever the traffic is.
Exactly.
So
be careful what you say, because it will put it all down there, and make sure you want to send it.
Another reason why you don't want to get it hacked. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, now, so now what, are these things all just at stoplights? Are they, I mean, how is this all working out?
They're at intersections, they are at major crossings, that sort of stuff. It is reading all of the information, seeing how many cars are coming, and as more cars get this information, it is taking more and more information. It can look farther and farther down the line, and it can do predictive stuff and tell the guy, half a mile away, there's an accident up here, and either reroute him, slow him down, do all sorts of things.
I'm a little scared, but Chris, we're going to have to monitor that and see what happens. Folks, it's going to be crazy, but stay tuned and we'll keep you right on track of what's going on. For now, though, we have to take a little break because it's now time for Pride in My Ride. Now, Pride in My Ride is a new feature we're going to have here on Cars in Context, and you can send me a photo of your car and why you have pride in your ride. You send it to Clor at carsincontext.com, or you call the War Memorial and send in your photo if you like. Just your name, where you're watching Cars in Context, whether it's on UVerse, AT&T, or WOW, and why you have pride in your ride. And so we're going to start out this first one with me. And here is my picture of my 1977 Ford Mustang II Cobra II. And the reason I have pride in this ride is because second-generation Mustangs are very rarely collected. That's a photo of me polishing. There's polishing my car. Now, you guys, if you're old enough, you'll remember Farrah Fawcett Majors sold a lot of the blue and white Cobra IIs. This one's a little tweaked thanks to Ford Racing. But I love the second-generation car, smaller, lighter, more fuel efficient, nimble to drive, rack and pinion steering, a lot of fun. So please, next time you watch Cars in Context, look for you on Pride in My Ride. But anyway, wait a minute, this just in. We've got some breaking news. Chris, this just in. What have we got? Oh, it's Lauren Parrott. Lauren, what do we have here?
Thank you, Lauren.
Oh, it's viewer mail. Thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Folks, we've got viewer mail for our Cars in Context viewers for watching us back on the old In a Heartbeat show. Here's one that's, to me, this one comes from Joe C. of Grosse Pointe Shores, who watches WMTV on Comcast Cable Channel 915. That means he's watching it in HD. Joe says to me, Dear John, oh, I got a Dear John letter. I was downright stunned when I saw your interview on the guy who tested knockoff auto parts. I remember that show that was with Steve Lubinsky, and he showed how inferior these parts are. Can't the automakers sue the Chinese companies that are reverse engineering parts and selling them here? How come the government goes after cheap knockoff designer purses and doesn't stop the import of these dangerous parts? Well, Joe, that's a great question. The government actually opened up trade to China, so this is a real issue, and the insurance companies, Chris, I think they like the cheap parts.
Some of them do, actually, and when you have to buy OE parts, now granted, they want the car to be brought back to proper spec, but the original idea was, hey, if we can get them cheaper, great, we're going to. And then we realized just how poorly built
they're bad. Folks, I hope you watch that show, because let me tell you, that was an eye-opener. Chris, it looks like there's one for you.
Yeah, this is from Don K of St. Clair Shores, who watches WMTV on AT&T UVerse Channel 99. Funny, so do I. He says, Hi Chris, saw you on the show about auto safety a while back where you credited Lee Iacocca with instituting the use of airbags in cars when he was with Chrysler. But I thought GM had offered Cadillacs, Buicks, and Oldsmobiles back in the early to mid-70s as the first cars sold to the public that could be ordered with an airbag. Wasn't it Iacocca who called the government airbag mandate an example of a solution being worse than the problem? Well, yes, on both counts.
He was right, so the guy was right. No?
It's partly true.
Okay.
GM did offer the airbags in those cars, but they were options. You had to order them. You had to want them, and nobody did. And at the time, airbags were rather dangerous.
Yeah, I think people were killed.
Well, they were, and they were filled with sodium azide, which was a Class 1 explosive. You couldn't even mail it. That was so bad, but you could put it in your car.
Right.
And so that changed. TRW made some changes, and there was also a change in the sensor technology, and finally, they're basically the systems we see today. Iacocca at the time was at Chrysler. He needed to do something to rev up the sales there. So what did he do? He says, hey, I'm going to sell safety, even though our cars really aren't that great. Anyway, and he decided that having an airbag was it. And he actually was using some marketing information that was showing what I now call the Purell generation. All those moms that hover over you and go, oh, you don't want to get dirty and all that. Well, he really tapped into that early and got these people to really start thinking about safety. And don't think about Volvo. Volvo already had some of those folks, but Iacocca made safety sell to everybody.
They were the first to ever offer them as standard equipment.
Yeah.
And that was
1988.
Wow, can you imagine that? So that was a great question there, Don. We appreciate it. Folks, if you have a question that you'd like us to answer, make sure you can always call the War Memorial or send us an email with Cars in Context in the subject line to Clor at carsincontext.com, and we'll make sure that you read your question on the air and get it answered for you. Chris, you know, I can't believe this, but our episode of Cars in Context has come to an end. We're at the end of the road. We got to shut the engine down for a little while now. But listen, I really appreciate you coming on.
Glad to do it.
Folks, that's Chris Sawyer. Chris is the founder and the editor of thevirtualdriver.com. It's a great blog. Go there for all your information, as I do. Chris, maybe we can have you on again. We're going to talk tech. We'll follow all the things that we talked about today. And folks, make sure you come back to carsincontext.com and keep us in your head next time you're thinking about your car. Again, thanks for watching. I'm John Clor. We'll see you next time. Remember, knowledge is power.